Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to really get under the hood of complex research, pulling out the key insights so you can stay informed. And today, we're tackling something huge in women's health. It affects millions, but honestly, finding good, safe, long-term solutions has been a real struggle. We're talking about managing severe menopausal symptoms. Now, the clinical term you might hear is vasomotor symptoms, or VMS. It sounds a bit dry, doesn't it?
It does, but what it actually means is, well, it's those intense hot flashes that kind of leave you drenched in the night sweats that just ruin your sleep.
Exactly. And this isn't just a minor inconvenience. We're talking about something that affects up to 80% of women going through menopause. And maybe the most shocking part, it doesn't just last a few months. The average is 7 to 10 years.
A decade. Imagine trying to function, sleep, work, live your life dealing with that disruption constantly.
That's incredibly disruptive. So the need for something effective, safe for long-term use, and crucially something non-hormonal. It's not just needed, it's urgent.
And that urgency really sets the stage for what we're digging into today. We're focusing on the OASIS-3 clinical trial results. This was a big one. A year-long international Phase 3 study looking at a new investigational drug called Elinzanetant.
Okay, let's not bury the lead here. What's the headline finding? Because it sounds pretty remarkable.
It really is. Basically, this non-hormonal drug showed a sustained reduction in both how often and how severe these moderate to severe VMS episodes were. And we're talking a reduction of more than 70% maintained over the full year of the study.
Wow. Okay, 70% over a year. That's definitely something we need to unpack.
Absolutely. So our mission today isn't just to report that number. We need to understand how it works. The biology is fascinating, the really targeted neurological approach. Then we'll really scrutinize the OASIS-3 data, look at the stats, the placebo effect, the nitty-gritty.
And critically, the long-term safety. If women might take this for years, we need to know it's safe.
Exactly. Safety is paramount. And finally, we'll talk about what this new type of treatment could actually mean for the future of managing menopause. It's potentially a big shift.
All right, let's start with the biology then. A hot flash feels like your whole body is overheating, but you said it starts in the brain, specifically the hypothalamus.
That's right. It's fundamentally a problem with the body's thermostat, which is regulated in the hypothalamus. There's a specific group of nerve cells there called KNDI neurons. KNDY.
KNDY neurons.
Okay, these neurons are very, very sensitive to estrogen levels.
So when estrogen levels drop during menopause, what happens to them?
Well, they essentially go haywire. They become dysfunctional. They actually get physically bigger. That's called hypertrophy. And they become hyperactive. They start firing off signals erratically.
So it's like the brain's thermostat suddenly becomes incredibly sensitive.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Before menopause, your body has a comfortable temperature range, right? A thermoneutral zone. But when these KNDY neurons become hyperactive, that zone dramatically shrinks.
Meaning even tiny changes in core body temperature, things that wouldn't have bothered you before, now trigger a massive reaction.
Precisely. A slight increase, maybe from exercise, stress, even a warm drink, pushes you outside this now very narrow comfort zone. The hyperactive neurons basically panic.
And that panic signal leads to the hot flash. Exactly. They trigger extreme cooling measures. Blood vessels near the skin dilate rapidly. That's the flushing. You start sweating profusely, and you feel that intense, overwhelming heat. That's the hot flash mechanism triggered by these misfiring neurons.
Okay, so if that's the problem, how does a targeted drug stop it? What signals are these KNDI neurons sending that can be blocked?
So these hyperactive neurons communicate using specific chemical messengers, neurotransmitters. The key ones here are neurokinin B and substance P.
Neurokinin B and substance P.
Right. These neurotransmitters then bind to specific docking sites or receptors on other cells. Think of it like a key fitting into a lock. Neurokinin B primarily acts on the neurokinin 3 receptor, or NK3. Substance P mainly acts on the neurokinin 1 receptor, or NK1.
NK3 and NK1 receptors. Yes. And if you can block those receptors, prevent the neurotransmitters from docking, you effectively block the panic signal from getting through. You stop the chain reaction that leads to the hot flash and sweating. You help restore a more normal temperature regulation.
And this is why it's called a non-hormonal approach, right? It's not trying to replace estrogen. It's working directly on these brain signals.
Exactly. It's a completely different pathway, bypassing the endocrine system entirely.
Which is so important because the main existing treatment, hormone therapy, while effective, has some significant issues.
It does. Hormone therapy, or HT, works well for many because it addresses the root cause, the falling estrogen. But it comes with baggage. Common side effects like breast tenderness, bloating, headaches, maybe unexpected bleeding or spotting.
And then there are the more serious long-term concerns.
Yes, long-term use does carry small but real increased risks for some serious conditions, like stroke or certain types of cancer. That's well established.
But even beyond those risks, there's a huge group of women who simply can't take hormones.
Absolutely, that's a critical point. Women with a personal history of blood clots or certain hormone-sensitive cancers, like breast cancer. HT is contraindicated. It's off the table. For them, finding a non-hormonal option isn't just a preference. It's a medical necessity.
So if HT is out, what have been the other options? You mentioned they weren't great.
Yeah, the non-hormonal landscape has been pretty disappointing, frankly. Doctors sometimes use certain antidepressants like SSRIs or SNRIs, or sometimes an anticonvulsant like gabapentin. Often this is off-label use.
Meaning the drugs weren't originally approved for VMS?
Correct. And the problem is they offer only modest relief, typically much less effective than HT. And perhaps the bigger issue is tolerability. Many women just don't feel well on them.
How bad are the discontinuation rates? They can be really high. Studies show up to 50% of women stop taking these alternatives within the first 3 months, mainly because of side effects like nausea, dizziness, or feeling drowsy. So you have this huge unmet need. Women who can't or won't take HT, and for whom the current non-hormonal options are either not effective enough or too difficult to tolerate.
Okay, so that brings us back to Elinzanetant. How does it fit into this picture? You called it a dual antagonist.
Right. Elinzanetant is specifically designed as a non-hormonal dual neurokinin-1 and neurokinin-3 receptor antagonist.
So it blocks both the NK1 and the NK3 receptors we talked about earlier.
Exactly. We do have another drug already approved that only blocks the NK3 receptor. That was a step forward. But Elinzanetant's approach is to block both pathways. It targets the signals from both neurokinin B, acting on NK3, and substance P, acting on NK1.
So the thinking is by blocking both, you get a more complete shutdown of that hyperactivity signal, a more robust effect. That's the hypothesis. Hit the problem from two angles simultaneously. And, as we'll touch on later, blocking the NK1 receptor might have additional benefits beyond just controlling the hot flashes, particularly when it comes to sleep.
Interesting. So a completely different mechanism targeting brain receptors, not hormones. Precisely. And the early signs from the shorter 26-week trials, OASIS-1 and OASIS-2, were very promising. But the big question was always, does it hold up long-term, and is it safe over that longer period? That's what OASIS-3 was designed to answer. Okay, let's transition then. Let's really dig into the OASIS-3 trial itself. If this is potentially something women could take for years, the study design and the data need to be rock solid. Tell us about the setup.
Right, so OASIS-3 was designed for maximum reliability. It was a large Phase 3 trial. That means it's a late-stage study intended to confirm efficacy and safety before potential approval. It was randomized, double-blind, and placebo-controlled, the gold standard design.
Randomized, meaning participants were assigned by chance to either get the drug or a placebo.
Correct. Double-blind means neither the participants nor the researchers knew who was getting the active drug and who was getting the placebo. This helps prevent bias.
And placebo-controlled is key for seeing the true drug effect above any expectation effect.
Absolutely. The scale was also significant. Over 600 postmenopausal women, aged 40 to 65, enrolled across 83 different study sites in North America and Europe.
And the duration you mentioned, a full year.
Yes, 52 weeks. That's crucial for assessing not just if it works initially, but if the effect lasts, and importantly, to monitor for any safety issues that might only emerge with longer-term use. The intervention was straightforward. 1 pill a day, either 120 milligrams of Elinzanetant or a matching placebo pill. That's right, simple, once-daily oral dosing.
Now, you mentioned something interesting earlier about who was included in this trial compared to previous ones. It wasn't just women with the absolute most extreme symptoms.
That's a really important point about OASIS-3's design. The earlier trials, OASIS-1 and 2, required participants to have at least 50 moderate to severe VMS events per week. It's a very high burden.
More than 7 a day, every day.
Exactly. OASIS-3 broadened the criteria. It didn't set such a high minimum threshold. It included women seeking treatment for moderate to severe symptoms, reflecting more of the typical range you'd see in a doctor's office.
So what was the average symptom frequency for women starting the OASIS-3 trial?
The baseline average was around 6.7 or 6.8 moderate to severe VMS events per day. Still very significant, that's roughly 47 episodes a week, but it allowed them to test the drug in a slightly less extreme, potentially broader population.
Which arguably makes the results even more relevant to more women, right? If it works well in this group too.
Precisely. It increases the generalizability of the findings.
Okay, let's get to the core results then. The primary goal, the main thing they were measuring, was the change in how many moderate to severe hot flashes women had per day, looking at the difference from the start of the trial to week 12. What did they find?
All right, so at week 12, the women taking Elinzanetant saw their average daily frequency drop by 5.4 events.
A reduction of over 5 episodes a day? That sounds substantial.
It is. But importantly, the placebo group also saw a reduction. Their average frequency dropped by 3.5 events per day.
Okay, that's a big placebo effect, a reduction of 3.5 episodes just from being in the trial and taking a sugar pill. This is common in VMS studies, isn't it?
Very common. The placebo response in hot flash trials is historically quite high. Expectations, the attention from researchers, just the act of participating can lead to improvements. That's why the comparison between the groups is critical.
So how did they determine if the drug's effect was real beyond that placebo response?
They use statistical analysis. The key here is the least squares mean difference between the two groups. After accounting for the placebo effect, Elinzanetant showed a statistically significant greater reduction compared to placebo.
And statistically significant. You mentioned the p-value earlier, less than 0.001.
Yes, p less than 0.0001. What that means, practically speaking, is that there's less than a 1 in 1,000 probability that the difference seen between the drug and placebo groups happened just by random chance. It gives us very strong confidence that Elinzanetant itself caused the additional benefit.
Okay, so can we put a number on that additional benefit? How much better was the drug than the placebo at week 12?
The least squares mean difference was about negative 1.6 events per day. So women on Elinzanetant had, on average, 1.6 fewer moderate to severe hot flashes per day than women on placebo at the 12-week mark. That's the specific drug effect.
Right. And while 1.6 might not sound massive on its own, when you add it to the baseline reduction, it leads to that big percentage figure you mentioned at the start.
Exactly. When you look at the percentage reduction from baseline descriptively, the Elinzanetant group saw a 73.8% drop in frequency by week 12.
73.8% compared to what for the placebo group?
The placebo group saw a 47.0% reduction. Still substantial, as we said, and actually quite consistent with historical data for placebo responses in VMS trials. A major review, the Cochrane review, found average placebo responses around 50%.
So the drug provided roughly an extra 27% reduction on top of that significant placebo effect.
That's right, which demonstrates a really meaningful clinical benefit attributable to the drug itself.
Now, that's week 12. What about the long haul? Did the effect wear off over the full year?
That's the other crucial finding. The effect was sustained. When they looked out to week 50, near the end of the trial, women still taking Elinzanetant were experiencing only about 1.4 moderate to severe VMS events per day on average.
Down from almost 7 at the start to just over 1 per day after nearly a year?
Correct. And importantly, that remained significantly lower than the placebo group, who were averaging about 3.5 events per day at week 50.
So the gap between the drug and placebo remained clear throughout the entire year?
Yes, demonstrating durable, long-term efficacy. This wasn't just a short-term fix. The benefit held up over 52 weeks. For a chronic condition lasting years, that sustained effect is exactly what patients and doctors are looking for.
Okay, a 70+% sustained reduction in hot flashes is clearly the headline. But these symptoms, they don't just affect temperature, right? They wreak havoc on sleep, mood, overall quality of life. Did the study look at those aspects?
It did. While the study was primarily designed and statistically powered to detect the difference in VMS frequency that was the main goal, they also collected data on secondary endpoints, including sleep disturbances and menopause-specific quality of life.
And what did they find there?
Well, it's important to preface this by saying these secondary endpoints weren't the main statistical target, so we look at the results descriptively. But what they saw were consistent numerical advantages for Elinzanetant compared to placebo across the full 52 weeks for both sleep and quality of life.
So the numbers look better for the drug group, even if it wasn't the primary statistical proof?
Exactly. For example, they used a standard questionnaire to measure sleep disturbance, the PROMIS Sleep Disturbance Short Form T-score. Lower scores mean better sleep.
Okay.
At week 52, the average improvement from baseline in the Elinzanetant group was a drop of 9.4 points. In the placebo group, it was a drop of 5.7 points.
So a noticeably better improvement in sleep scores for the women on the drug.
Yes, descriptively. A change of nearly 9.4 points on that scale suggests a pretty meaningful improvement in perceived sleep quality, less disturbance, perhaps feeling more rested.
And quality of life.
Similar pattern. They used the menopause-specific quality of life questionnaire, the MEN-NQOL. Again, looking at the change from baseline to week 52, the drug group showed numerically better improvement across the total score compared to the placebo group.
Now, we talked about the dual mechanism earlier, blocking both NK1 and NK3 receptors. You hinted the NK1 part might be relevant to sleep.
That's right. This is where the dual action might offer something unique. While the NK3 pathway seems heavily involved in the thermoregulation, the hot flash itself, the NK1 receptor and its neurotransmitter, substance P, are thought to be involved in other central nervous system functions, potentially including sleep regulation and even things like mood and anxiety.
So by blocking NK1, Elinzanetant might be having a more direct beneficial effect on sleep architecture, separate from just reducing the number of night sweats.
That's the thinking, yes.
Yeah.
It's plausible that part of the observed sleep benefit comes from this direct neurological effect via NK1 antagonism. Not just indirectly because women are waking up less from sweating. It suggests a potential added value of the dual mechanism.
That's fascinating. Okay, stepping back, considering these results, the strong VMS reduction sustained over a year, plus these positive signals on sleep and quality of life, what are the big clinical takeaways? What does this mean for doctors and patients?
Well, as leading experts like Dr. Joanne Pinkerton have commented, the fact that these effects are sustained over a full year is incredibly encouraging. It offers real hope for managing what is often a very long-term problem.
And especially for that group, we keep coming back to the women who can't use hormones.
Absolutely. That's perhaps the most significant implication. For women with contraindications to hormone therapy, maybe they've had breast cancer or blood clots, or for women who simply prefer a non-hormonal route, this represents a potentially highly effective, well-tolerated new option where choices have been limited and often unsatisfactory.
And you mentioned a related trial, OASIS-4, specifically in women with breast cancer.
Yes, and this is critical. Many breast cancer treatments, particularly endocrine therapies like tamoxifen or aromatase inhibitors, can actually cause or worsen hot flashes, sometimes severely. And these women absolutely cannot take estrogen.
So they're dealing with treatment side effects that mimic menopause symptoms, but without the main treatment option available.
Exactly. It's a terrible double bind. The OASIS-4 trial specifically studied Elinzanetant in women experiencing these treatment-induced hot flashes. And the findings were very positive. It showed similar efficacy and safety in that population.
So this drug could potentially become a go-to first-line treatment for moderate to severe VMS, regardless of whether it's caused by natural menopause or by cancer therapy.
That's the potential, yes. It could offer a safe harbor, a reliable way to manage these debilitating symptoms for a very wide range of women, including some of the most vulnerable who previously had very few good choices. It really could change the standard of care.
Okay. Efficacy looks strong, sustained, and potentially broad. But the other side of the coin for long-term treatment is always safety. Let's pivot to the safety profile observed over that full 52 weeks in OASIS-3. What did we learn?
Right, safety is absolutely critical. So overall, as you'd expect, treatment-related side effects or adverse events were reported more often by women taking Elinzanetant than by those taking the placebo.
What were the percentages there?
It was about 30.4% in the Elinzanetant group, reporting at least one treatment-related AE, compared to 14.6% in the placebo group.
Okay, about double. But you also mentioned severity earlier.
Yes, and this is key. The vast majority of these AEs in the drug group, almost 90%, 89.5% to be exact, were rated as mild or moderate in intensity by the investigators.
So mostly manageable side effects. What were the most common ones people experienced?
The three most frequently reported were somnolence, which means feeling sleepy or drowsy fatigue, and headache. These are fairly typical side effects for drugs that act on the central nervous system.
Did many people have to stop taking the drug because of these side effects?
The discontinuation rate due to adverse events was 12.5% in the Elinzanetant group, compared to 4.1% in the placebo group. So yes, more people stopped due to side effects on the drug. Primarily fatigue and headache were cited.
But still, that means 87.5% of women who started on Elinzanetant were able to continue taking it for the full year.
Exactly. Which suggests that for most participants, the benefits in terms of symptom relief likely outweigh the side effects they experienced.
What about serious adverse events? Anything alarming there?
Serious AEs were uncommon, occurring in about 4.2% of women in the drug group. But the crucial finding here is that none of these serious events were considered by the study investigators to be related to the study drug itself.
Okay, that's reassuring. Now, you mentioned earlier that liver safety was a big focus for this class of drugs. What did OASIS-3 find specifically regarding the liver over the full year?
Yes, this was under intense scrutiny because, historically, some other neurokinin receptor blockers had raised concerns about potential liver toxicity or hepatotoxicity, so they watched this very closely in OASIS-3.
The news was very good. The trial included an external, independent group of experts, a liver safety monitoring board, whose sole job was to review all of the liver function data. Their conclusion was clear. There was no signal of a hepatotoxic effect from Elinzanetant over the 52 weeks. That's huge. Removing that potential worry is really important for long-term use.
It absolutely is. It suggests Elinzanetant has a different, cleaner profile in that regard compared to some predecessors, giving doctors and patients much more confidence.
What about other areas sensitive to hormonal changes, even though this isn't a hormone, like uterine health or breast tissue?
They monitored those carefully, too. Using ultrasound and biopsies, they found no evidence of abnormal thickening of the uterine lining, endometrial hyperplasia, or any cancers over the year. Changes in endometrial thickness were minimal and not clinically concerning. Mammogram results also showed no safety issues related to the drug.
And bone health. Osteoporosis is a major concern after menopause. Did the drug seem to affect bone density?
Bone mineral density, BMD, was measured at the hip, spine, and femoral neck. The small changes observed over the year were well within the range expected due to normal aging in postmenopausal women, typically a loss of 1 to 2% per year. There was no indication that Elinzanetant accelerated bone loss.
Any impact on weight or metabolism?
Nope. Body weight and body composition remained stable throughout the 52 weeks in the drug group, which is also reassuring.
Okay, so overall, the safety profile over a year looks pretty favorable, especially on those key markers like liver and bone. But no study is perfect. For a balanced view, what were the limitations of OASIS-3?
That's important to discuss. The main limitation relates to statistical power. As we mentioned, the trial was rigorously designed and powered to prove the difference in the primary endpoint, the frequency of hot flashes.
Right.
The secondary endpoint, sleep, quality of life, while showing those positive numerical trends, the study wasn't specifically designed with enough statistical power to definitively prove those differences were statistically significant. So we have to interpret those as encouraging signals or descriptive findings rather than definitive proof points from this specific trial.
Okay, that's a fair distinction. What about the diversity of the participants?
The trial enrolled women across North America and Europe, but representation from certain ethnic groups, specifically Asian women and Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander women, was limited. So while the results are likely broadly applicable, we need to be a bit cautious about generalizing the exact findings to every single demographic group without more specific data.
Are researchers looking into these areas further, addressing the limitations?
They are. For instance, there's another ongoing trial called NR-VANA, which is specifically designed to look at Elinzanetant's efficacy in women for whom sleep disturbance is a major primary complaint. That should provide more robust, statistically powered data on the sleep aspect.
And OASIS-4 already addressed the oncology population.
Exactly. So the picture is still evolving, and researchers are actively working to fill in some of these gaps and build an even more complete understanding of the drug's effects across different populations and symptom profiles.
All right, let's try to synthesize all of this. We've gone through the biology, the OASIS-3 trial design, the strong efficacy results, the secondary benefits, the safety profile, and the limitations. What's the main takeaway message from this deep dive?
I think the core message is that Elinzanetant looks like a genuinely promising development. The OASIS-3 data provides strong evidence for substantial, sustained relief from moderate to severe hot flashes. That 70+% reduction held over a full year.
And importantly, it did this with a safety profile that appears favorable, especially clearing hurdles related to liver, bone, and endometrial health, which are crucial for a non-hormonal option intended for potentially long-term use.
Precisely. It seems to effectively address that significant unmet need we discussed, providing a potent non-hormonal option for women who can't, or prefer not to, use hormone therapy. It appears well tolerated for the vast majority.
So where does Elinzanetant stand now in terms of actually becoming available for patients?
Well, the drug company submitted this data, including the OASIS-3 findings, to regulatory agencies like the FDA in the U.S. for approval. However, as of July 2025, the FDA indicated they needed more time to complete their review of the application. So it's still under review, not yet approved for commercial use. The data is strong, but the regulatory process takes time.
Okay, so pending regulatory decisions, looking beyond just this specific drug, what does the success of this kind of targeted approach, the dual neurokinin antagonism, tell us about the future direction of menopause management, or maybe even treating other conditions?
I think it signals a really important shift. We're moving beyond just trying to broadly replace hormones systemically, which has widespread effects, some good, some potentially problematic. Instead, we're getting much more precise.
Targeting the specific neurological pathway that underlies the symptom itself.
Exactly. Identifying those hyperactive KNDI neurons and the specific receptors involved, like NK1 and NK3, and developing molecules to selectively modulate just that pathway. It's a much more tailored neurological solution for what manifests as a physical symptom.
Which leads to a really interesting thought for you, the listener, to consider. If a chronic disruptive symptom like hot flashes, potentially lasting a decade, can be effectively and safely managed by precisely targeting specific neuroreceptors in the brain, what does that imply for other common, often poorly managed conditions?
Think about things like certain types of chronic pain, or maybe even conditions like debilitating migraines or primary insomnia itself. Could those also benefit from this kind of highly specific, non-hormonal neurological targeting, moving away from broader systemic treatments with more side effects?
It feels like this could be a glimpse into a future of more personalized, neuroscience-based approaches to managing midlife health challenges and perhaps many other chronic conditions as well.
It's certainly a very exciting avenue of research, grounded in the kind of rigorous clinical data we've explored today with OASIS-3. Hopefully, this deep dive has provided a clear understanding of where this science currently stands.
We hope so too. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll be back soon to unpack more essential knowledge.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.